Hey everyone, it's Colin. How's it going? Retro audio media is all the rage these days. Vinyl records, cassette tapes, and even mini discs in some circles are back in production again. But have you ever heard of music released on floppy disk? So just a bit of a kind of quick casual video for you this time. If you followed the channel for a while, you know I'm a fan of the vaporwave music scene, and when I saw these two come up for sale, I couldn't pass them up. This is kind of a shortened version of the album I Love Hating You by Frank JFC, and then this is like a sample flip, they call it, kind of challenge from my buddy 3D Blast. These were actually fairly inexpensive, about 10 bucks or so. Obviously, you know, they don't cost that much to produce, but they were made pretty nicely. It's kind of a nice way to just support your favorite artists, right? They come in these plastic sleeves, and they look like they're brand new discs with full color labels that wrap all the way around. These were done by the label Strudel Soft. I believe they're up in Canada. And what I don't know, because I didn't really look too close at the details when I bought them, is what format the audio on these floppies is going to be on. I'm suspecting MIDI, because obviously floppy disks can't hold that much information, 1.4 megabytes, right? You're not going to fit an entire album or even a single MP3 in relatively decent quality in that small of a space. So I'm curious if these maybe aren't MIDI files of the songs. That could be really interesting if it was, but either way, let's fire up a retro laptop and drop these in and just check them out. I'm not sure if I've ever shown this machine off, at least not very much on the channel before. This is my ThinkPad R51. It's a model from around 2004 or so. This is the Celeron M version, so it's not the fastest, but you could get it with Pentium M CPUs. I think this one's got 2 gigabytes of RAM and like a 30 gig hard drive, but it's an all-around like pretty solid machine, runs Windows XP really well, has lots of the typical ThinkPad features, the ThinkLite, full-size keyboard, all of that. This particular one I got several years ago fairly inexpensively. And part of that is because, unfortunately, I didn't know it at the time, it had belonged to a smoker. It was a business laptop, so someone hauled it around traveling with them. It's got some wear and tear here and there, but overall it's in good shape. I finally have it to the point, after like completely taking it apart and cleaning it out really well, where it doesn't really smell like smoke anymore, thankfully. But if you're in the market for like a really solid Windows XP laptop, this one is probably worth checking out as well. One bummer is that for our purposes here today, it doesn't have a built-in floppy drive, just optical. So we're gonna have to go with an external USB unit, which is no problem. So let's do the Frank JFC album first, since I know there are at least supposed to be several songs on here. I'm really curious as to how that's done. Although, I just noticed a little bit of a rookie mistake here. The right protect tab has not been switched. There we go. Keep that from any sort of accidents. And see what we get here. Okay, so there's 5 tracks on here and a README. Let's check out the README first. Okay, so just some cool, I guess, call them liner notes, I suppose, about the album. And here's what I'm most curious about is these files. Take a look at the details on one of these. Wait, so it's actually like it's audio, not MIDI. 16 kilobits per second at 8 kilohertz sample rate, but it's still in stereo? This has got to sound absolutely wild. If this is an MP3, I had no idea you could even compress them that small. Let's fire this thing up in Winamp and see what it sounds like. All right, let's get you plugged in here so you can hear direct what this is going to sound like. This is going to be very interesting, I think. So here goes nothing. I know this first track has some acoustic instruments in it, so that should be a really interesting example here. So if you've ever wondered how to make music sound like it's off of like an old school telephone or whatever, I guess we've figured it out. Just compress it to MP3 at like a ridiculous bit rate. And of course, a sample rate of 8 kilohertz is going to just chop the entire top end off, right? Oh, I was wondering about that. That skip? The floppy drive can't quite keep up. Yeah, the floppy drive isn't quite fast enough to play this file still. So every once in a while, Winamp kind of runs out of buffer, I guess. Wow. How big is this file? 300 kilobytes. They got an entire song into 300 kilobytes in MP3 format. That is funny. I'm guessing the rest of these files are probably all about the same in terms of, this one's 254. Yeah, they're going to be all the same 16 kilobit, 8 kilohertz sample rate. But they still bothered to do it in stereo. You could have gotten a little bit more data rate at least out of it if they had gone mono. Again, I'm still surprised that you can even compress an MP3 that small. I always thought that something like 64 kilobit per second was kind of like the lower end for what most encoders would do. That's hilarious. So let's check out the other floppy. All right, so here we go with 3D Blast. Again, we gotta do the Write Protect tab just in case. I think some of these were like Halloween themed. I seem to remember this one. 452 kilobytes. So they were able to, yeah, give it a little bit more. 24 kilobit per second at 11 kilohertz. Ooh, we're fancy now. So obviously, when they put these floppies together, they encoded the files just so that they would fit. I mean, this disk is probably completely full, right? Yeah, there's only 41 kilobytes left, so they basically just tried to target the bit rate just to fill the disk and get the best they could, which is the right way to do it, but that's still just hilarious. Let's take a listen to this one real quick, since it's a little bit higher quality. Again, the high end totally rolled off just because of the sample rate. What's interesting to me is that it's still recognizable. I figured that when you would get to that low of a bit rate, that it would just turn into this weird garbled mess, yet somehow you can still tell there are instruments there. Oh, all right, so the floppy drive is still having problems, and it actually, yeah, there's another skip. It may actually have worse problems on these files because they're bigger, higher data rate. I mean, that's a really interesting consideration, right? We're just so used to having pretty much any form of external media be fast enough to at least play like audio off of it in real time, but even at this low of a bit rate, the floppy disk isn't necessarily able to keep up. So yeah, that's a thing. Obviously, like this is a novelty, right? Like, I don't think anyone is expected to buy this and have this be the primary way that they listen to this music. And in fact, a lot of times when you see any sort of retro media release, you know, physical release, it'll include a download code so you can get, an MP3 or even a lossless version of that same music. This is really just a way to support an artist, especially an independent one, and get something tangible out of it instead of just this kind of empty feeling download or stream, right? And I think that's really kind of what's behind the whole push in retro audio media these days anyway. All the vinyl records and cassettes and even mini discs that we're starting to see, it's because people want to get something physical. Floppy disks is kind of a new territory though. I mean, I'm sure there have been some other artists over the past few years who have done something similar, but I'd imagine most of them have been in the more electronic realm where they've, for lack of a better way of putting it, like their music normally kind of sounds like it's MIDI files, so I would expect them to be releasing it as MIDI files on floppies. That these have MP3s on them is really curious. Where does this go, right? I mean, is floppies going to be kind of it, or will we see music start to get released, albeit in small quantities, on other computer-based physical media going forward? Will we start to see artists doing like zip disk releases? SideQuest drives, Bernoulli discs? Like, where does this go? I don't know, I'm kind of curious. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Is it just going to stop here, or are we going to start to see some other kind of goofy releases just for fun? But either way, I think this was kind of neat, and I like to be able to support artists whose music I enjoy, and if I can get some sort of tangible token out of that, then hey, that's all the better. Anyway, if you like this one, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe. You can follow me on social media @thisdoesnotcomp. And as always, thanks for watching.